Well, I'm going to do what I can, but I prepared some written material to add to what I submitted with my request to be on the agenda tonight.
Perfect. Thank you.
There should be enough copies for all members of council, and I have copies for senior members of staff that I can provide to them. I don't want to take too much time of my very, very limited time here. I'm trying to tackle a huge issue, and I'm trying to persuade this council, or some members of you at least, that there are good reasons to pause council's actions towards implementing various actions and policies to allegedly limit climate change, ameliorate the future climate of the planet. People like myself who ask these types of questions are typically called climate change deniers. I don't deny climate change, and none of the people that I rely on or the information that I'm presenting deny climate change. In fact, climate change is continuous and enormous. And all of us should know, if we took our high school geography, that this place where we're standing today was under 1.5 miles of ice 10, 12,000 years ago. And that ice receded and went away. That ice went down through New York State and into Pennsylvania. But it receded. And it receded thousands of years ago when there was no coal-fired power plants, there were no SUVs, there was nobody heating their homes with oil and natural gas. In fact, climate geologists who know the history of the multi-billion years of the planet, I think it's something like 4.6 billion years, tell us that there were 6 great glaciations in the history of this planet. And in a couple of the ones that happened hundreds of millions of years ago, the entire globe was covered in ice, including the tropics, top to bottom, all ice. And those glaciations receded and went away. And in fact, they went away in a couple of instances to the point for millions of years, Antarctica and the Arctic were ice-free. We know that because there are fossils found in these regions, fossils of organic life that existed there in the many millions of years ago. We also know that oil and gas is found in Alaska and in the Arctic Circle. So there's been huge change. But now, in recent years, we've been persuaded that carbon dioxide has to be limited because it causes this. Scientists don't know what caused the glaciations and the elimination and recession and disappearance of the glaciations. There are many theories on this. None of them relate to carbon dioxide. In fact, carbon dioxide has been many times higher in the percentage of the atmosphere than it is today, at times during ice ages and during very warm periods. The planets Venus and the planet Mars both have atmospheres that are more than 90% carbon dioxide. And one is fiercely, unbelievably hot, and the other is fiercely, unbelievably cold. If carbon dioxide causes global warming, how is that possible? What is the percentage of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? Most people say it's 5% or 10% or something. In fact, it's 4/100ths of 1%. It's a tiny gas. And scientists, even those who support the measures that you're implementing, know that nature produces 97% of the new carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every year. Man, including China and India and all the coal-fired plants in the world, contribute 3%. Carbon dioxide is not the major greenhouse gas. Water vapor is. It's 90% of the greenhouse gas. Carbon dioxide, I said in my written paper, is about 4% of the remaining 10%. It's actually about 6% of the remaining. 2% is methane, and nitrogen, I think, is a small piece of that. So there's reason to think about whether going down this road is sensible and beneficial. Are you going to change the climate? Are you going to hold off the climate change, whatever those forces were that brought glaciations and took them away, are we to believe that suddenly they went away and now you and I, driving our cars, are controlling the climate? We can overcome whatever it was that did that. Don't think it's very sensible. The paper I sent to you early today was by Mark Mills. It's a video presentation with written summaries. And he explains that to do the transition to electric vehicles and electric heating, et cetera, is impossible to achieve, simply because these measures are minerals intensive. And he explains in great detail that there are not enough minerals required to carry out this transition. There are many other papers that I could present to you that analyze the same thing from different angles and show that to believe that we can transition and go from a carbon or fossil fuels society to electrical society.
Mr. Dunn, you have about 30 seconds.
So that's why I have to rely on the written submissions unless there are questions that I can answer. Sure. I'm not a climate scientist, but I've been interested in this issue for 15 years. I've got a collection of 30, 40 books on climate science, and I've watched literally hundreds of hours of scientific presentations on these topics. So with that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dunn, for your presentation, and thank you very much for your written material. It's always helpful. Questions for Mr. Dunn? Councillor Crowley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Just a quick question. Maybe you can give me your sort of opinion on it. You've written many books. I have not written many books.
No, I haven't written books.
You've read many books.
Sorry.
I don't read books.
I haven't written a one.
So what's your opinion on the science behind the release of methane from the melting of permafrost or the melting of the polar ice caps, etc.? Like, how does the release of methane into the atmosphere negatively affect the global climate and lead to potentially runaway climate change? Is that something you have looked into or studied?
Well, if methane is 2% of the total greenhouse gases and water vapor is 90%, I ask you, does it make sense to you that a little more methane would change the big picture?
But fair enough. This is completely
just methane is such a tiny, tiny thing. Like methane represents, if you had a stadium of 100,000 people, it's like maybe a half of one person in there.
Mm-hmm. So there's a significant amount of methane in the ground melted in the permafrost around the world. Is there not? And what you're saying is the release of all of that would add an insignificant amount of methane.
The whole theory is
the atmosphere?
that methane is a greenhouse gas and somewhere is going to trap heat on the planet and cause harmful global warming. But remember, the main greenhouse gas is water vapor. 90% of all greenhouse gases is water vapor. So how is this tiny little piece, water vapor is 90%, methane is 2%. Let's say it doubled or tripled or quadrupled. So what? It's pretty hard to believe that this tiny little percentage is going to overcome whatever forces there are in the universe that brought us 6 major glaciations and then melted all the ice away to the point that Antarctica and the Arctic regions were full of plant and animal life at periods, and that the tropical regions were covered in ice. It's much more likely, when scientists look at various things, the fact that the Earth rotates at sometimes more or less like a circle around the sun. At other times, it's more like an ellipsis. The tilt of the Earth changes over time. Sunspot activity changes in the sun. We're going into a cool period right now. We're at the end of a warm period, near the end. We've had glaciations every 10 to 20,000 years. We are at the 11,000 year mark now since the last one. Much more likely we're going to go cool than hot.
Okay, thank you
There
very
were
much. No,
scientists back in the 1800s who predicted the price of grain based on his observations of the amount of sunspot activity in the sun. Apparently, he did very well financially in speculating on the price of wheat based on his observations of sunspot activity in the sun. We're in a period of very low sunspot activity right now. We just had about the coldest June I've ever seen.
excellent. Well, no, that's good. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
answering my
Dr.
question.
Crowley. Any further questions for Mr. Dunn? Thank you very much, Mr. Dunn, for your presentation this evening.
Thank you.